the Senate President and I just signed into law the new congressional maps, which were ordered to be redrawn by the court. This is something that we've been focused on for 8 years. It's a tremendous victory for democracy and for free and fair elections in Maryland. When these maps came out in December, I said they were unconstitutional and violated the law. The courts agreed, described it as extreme partisan gerrymandering and a clear violation of the Constitution, ordered the legislature to go back and draw new maps, which they did. Now, they weren't, in my opinion, as good as the ones drawn by the Citizen Commission, and we shouldn't have wasted so much time, but they are a huge improvement, and it's a huge victory. The plaintiffs agreed to drop their appeal. There was an attempt to say we will draw new maps, but we still want to go back to the gerrymandered unconstitutional maps, and we'll take it to another court. They've decided to drop those attempts, and now it's the law of the land. And I want to just thank all of the people who participated in the Citizens Commission. I want to thank all the Republicans and Democrats who really were fighting for fair maps. I think gerrymandering is a cancer on our democracy, regardless of which party does it. Well, this was the first number of maps have been thrown out in other states around the country. Republican maps, this is the first time in the United States that a set of Democratic maps have been thrown out for the same reasons. With that, I'd be happy to take some questions.
Governor, with this decision to drop these appeals, does this basically leave the door open in 10 years to fight these battles again?
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up because it's probably what I forgot to mention in my opening remarks. This is a huge win for democracy and for improvement in the process, and now we're going to have fair maps and fair elections in this election cycle. But we still have a piece of legislation before the legislature that we've been attempting to get passed for 8 years, which would fix this process permanently, not just for the next 10 years, but forever, so that they couldn't go back and continue to cheat and break the Constitution the next time. And so there's, they acted pretty quickly on these maps in just a matter of days. I'm not sure why they can't act on that legislation just as fast and get that done before the session's over with.
I want to ask you about the fix moving forward. How do you doing this?
I think the way to move forward is, I think, first of all, when you're found to have violated the law, hopefully that, and you had to go back and redraw the maps, that's going to fix it for the next decade. But I think we do need to go back and fix the flawed process. This is something that's wrong no matter who does it. They've been doing it for decades. I'm the first one to try to do something about it. We've been fighting for 8 years, and it's great to finally have gotten that done before we leave. But I still want them to pass the bill so that 10 years from now they won't go back to their same old ways of violating the Constitution.
Governor Hogan, on that bill, on Friday, the Senate President hinted that he was talking or negotiating about the map. Were there discussions about them moving that piece of legislation forward before the session ends?
Yeah, I'd rather not get into all the details of all the discussions that we're having with the presiding officers, but I mean, it was a great, we did have discussions, and them agreeing to drop the appeal. There was an attempt to go back to the gerrymandered maps, and that was a huge victory to get them to back off of that and to agree that we would sign this into law.
On that, Governor, did the Attorney General know that you would sign this map if they withdrew?
We were in discussions with the Attorney General, who's was the one filing the appeal. So it was with the presiding officers and the Attorney General, and we all came to an agreement that it was something they should not pursue, throwing out the judge's order.
Governor, one of us said that you prefer the citizens' map, but do you feel as though this map is fair as it relates to?
This map is a huge step in the right direction. It's not perfect. And there's still some issues that I think could be corrected, but it's miles away from the really incredibly gerrymandered map that was thrown out by the court.
Governor, you have indicated that this is one of the items that you had on your agenda since you took office. Will you talk about what the legacy of all this means as people go back and look at what you did as governor?
Well, I mean, it's been a pretty good week. I mean, we just passed $2 billion in tax cuts, and I've been talking about the retirement tax cut since 2014, and we were successful at that. I've been talking about trying to fix the broken process so that we could have free and fair elections, and we stopped the gerrymandering, which was described as the worst in America, and we've now done that to a certain extent, but I still want that bill passed. we've gotten a lot done, and I just want to thank, although we don't always agree, we have, in many cases, come together with the leaders of both houses and gotten things done. We did it with the Relief Act last year, we did it with the retirement tax elimination this year, and reluctantly, with the help of the court, we've also got them to move forward on the fair match.
I have an important process question going forward. The Attorney General's office told me a short time ago that this signing ends the Battaglia case. The circuit court, there's still that tandem case at the appeals level over the legislative district. So we can't have a primary until that's settled.
Right.
Can you give us any insight on where that stands now?
It's not an appeal. It's on the legislative match. The process actually goes straight to the Court of Appeals. It doesn't stop at the circuit court. I believe that Judge Wilner is supposed to come up with his preliminary findings. They appointed a master, a retired judge, who's been doing all the fact finding, and I think he's supposed to come out with his report tomorrow. And then the Court of Appeals still has to act on that. So we're hopeful. Look, the exact same process was done in both cases. It was a back room, in secret, behind closed doors, by the Democratic caucus, pushing through these maps. The same intent was to protect the incumbents and to maintain their large majorities. So I believe hopefully we're going to be successful there, but it's a whole different set of legal issues in a different court. And so we're hopeful, but that one, you're right, you can't move forward because nobody knows what legislative districts they're in yet.
Thank you. Governor, on another topic, what do you think of the bill that's moving through the General Assembly that would spend $400 million to near FedEx Field to try and persuade the commanders to stay?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything about that bill.
Governor, is there an area of the congressional map, you mentioned this is a big improvement, but where on the map do you think there needs to be some further thought, or would have liked to have seen one?
I'm not a cartographer, so I haven't really studied the exact lines, but I know there were some concerns from people who said that there were still a few kind of tweaks they would have preferred. It's not as good as the citizen maps, according to all the lawyers and all the experts, but we're about 90% there, so it's a huge improvement.
Governor Hogan, there's a week left. Speaking of working with other members, the Judicial Transparency Act is still in the House. It's still in committee. Have you had any conversations when it comes to the leadership about that, as well as the other priorities that you have?
We're talking with the leaders in both houses nearly every day. That's obviously an important one we're trying to get done. It's supported by about 90% or more than 90% of the people in Maryland, and it's already been watered down. But the fact, and it did pass the Senate, but we've got to get it shaken loose in the House. It's critically important, and we're going to try to address the violent crime.
Last question.
I did have a question about the maps. The plaintiffs in the here and now project, which I guess is moved now, but they had one big problem with the second version of the map, that there was basically 30,000 Democratic voters sliced out of the city in District 7, stuck into District 2 to ensure Democratic victory. They said that is still partisan gerrymandering. Were you willing to sign off on that because the maps never looked this good in decades, or why did you not push further?
Well, all of the plaintiffs dropped they all agreed to not pursue an appeal, so everybody accepted the maps, although I said they're not perfect and we would have preferred the citizen maps. Obviously, you can't get everything you want, but it's almost everything we want. All right, thank you.